Warning: this story contains bullying, violence, psychological themes, angst, and mature content. This is a dark romance. Be warned. April. Fuck me harder. Angel, go deeper. Yes. Yes, ruin me with that big cock of fuck. I'm going to come. The raw, breathless shriek cut straight through the wall and left my ears ringing. I screwed my eyes shut and pressed my palms flat to the wooden surface until my knuckles lost all their color. I banged my head against my study table, over and over. This has to stop. It has to. Thud. 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 The ache blooming in my forehead was nothing next to the pure misery blasting through that wall. I pulled back, rubbing the sore spot, staring blankly at the open book in front of me. My stepsister and the so-called whore she dragged into this house have been swallowing up my quiet space. I need to read. But it seems that won't be happening tonight. The letters on the page smeared into an unreadable mess as another loud, wet slap echoed from the next room. I gripped the edges of my desk, jaw clenched so tight it ached. Not when there's live porn playing next door. Impossible to ignore, the frantic shifting of bed sheets, the heavy rhythmic thumping against the partition. I dragged in a deep, shaky breath, forcing air into my lungs, trying to smother the anger climbing up my throat. By the way, this house we live in has plenty of rooms, but for some stupid reason, Angel Morningstar picked the one right next to mine. Out of all the empty space in this massive mansion, she chose the exact spot that would guarantee I'd never get a single moment of peace. It was calculated. A daily reminder that she's in my life and she's not going anywhere. Ever since our parents got married, my life has been a nightmare. We share everything. The same mothers, the same last name, the same house. Every little detail of my existence got twisted to match theirs, stripping away whatever identity I had left. I was dragged into this arrangement against my will, forced to fit into a family I never asked for. High school was finally over, and the next thing my mother told me was that she'd gotten married on her business trip. To some wealthy alpha. The news hit me like a punch to the gut, delivered over a casual, glitchy phone call while I was still processing graduation. No discussion, no warning, just a sudden announcement that flipped my whole world upside down. I was mad. No, furious. Why would my mother get married again without me there? Just, hello, hi, I'm married now, bye. Who does that to their own child? The sheer disrespect of it burned in my chest, a hot spark of resentment that grew bigger every single time I thought about that day. She didn't care about my feelings or what I had to say. She dove headfirst into a brand new life without giving me a second thought. Then it turned out I had to move in and start living with my new mom and her so-called daughter, who happens to be an alpha too. I hated it. But I tried my best to be nice, and what did I get? An ignorant jerk of a sister who bullied me every chance she got. My polite smiles were met with cold stares. My attempts at conversation were brushed off with mocking laughs and deliberate shoulder checks in the hallways. She made it her personal mission to make sure I knew my place, and my place was always beneath her feet. For 4 years, she has been my worst nightmare, a non-stop storm of petty insults, wrecked belongings, and deliberate psychological warfare that bled me dry day after day. I lived on high alert, always watching my back, always bracing for the next hit. Back to the present, I have no idea what kind of horror she dragged in tonight, but do they have to go at it that loud? The walls are literally vibrating. Another high-pitched moan tore through the air, followed by a thud so heavy the framed picture on my desk actually rattled. I yanked off my glasses and pinched the bridge of my nose as the last scrap of my patience evaporated. I need to focus. I really, really need to focus. I clamped my hands over my ears and pressed down hard, but those wet, rhythmic sounds seeped through my fingers anyway. I have to kill that noise. I couldn't just sit here and swallow it, letting them wreck my night and my reading schedule without so much as a fight. So I did exactly what I wanted. I stood in front of Angel's door. She hadn't even locked it. It was slightly ajar. Out here the sounds were deafening, and the heavy scent of alpha pheromones hung thick and suffocating in the air, turning my stomach. I swear I didn't mean to open it. I only knocked, and the door swung open on its own, revealing everything inside that room. My knuckles barely brushed the wood before the panel drifted backward, hinges gliding without a single sound. My breath snagged in my throat. freezing me right where I stood as the bedroom laid itself bare in front of me. How do I unsee this? No. I can never unsee this, not with my glasses on. It's too vivid, too unforgettable. The blonde girl was on all fours, sweat dripping off her body, mostly down her ruined makeup. I don't know what it was, but there was a dog leash around her neck and Angel was holding the other end. The thick leather strap was pulled taut, forcing the girl's head up while her hands twisted into the tangled sheets for balance. Beads of sweat glistened on her flushed skin under the dim lamps, her chest heaving with every desperate breath she took. For the first time, I saw Angel nude, and she was pounding into the blonde over and over. The pale lines of her back muscles shifted and flexed with terrifying power, driving forward in a brutal, relentless rhythm. The sheer force of it sent ripples through the mattress, filling the whole room with a loud, slapping sound. I could hear every bit of it, so clearly that when I tried to back away, I tripped over one of Tara's squishy toys. Squeak! That shrill little noise sliced through the heavy air like a knife, shattering the room's rhythm. Fuck. Why does it always have to be right in the way? I cursed silently under my breath, balance gone, hand shooting out to grab the doorframe before I hit the floor. For a second, Angel went still. Then both girls slowly turned toward the door and saw me. Angel, I thought you said you were the only one living here, the blonde said, breathless. She slumped against the pillows, fingers fumbling at the leather collar around her neck, her face flaring a bright, mortified red. Yes, this is my house. That thing just happens to be a tenant ghost who refuses to pay rent, Angel said, and she pulled out, stepping off the bed. Her voice stayed smooth, completely untouched by the fact that someone had just barged in, as she shifted her weight and swung her legs over the edge of the mattress. And now I could see everything. The shadows slid off her as she stood up to her full height, that tall frame filling the room, without a single shred of shame or modesty. I don't know why I was still standing there. I should have bolted back to my room, or at least turned around, but my feet felt glued to the floor, every muscle locked tight by some mix of shock, anger, and something I couldn't put a name to. My eyes took in all of it. The sleek lines of that athletic build, her boobs, the tattoos, the hard ridges of muscle across her stomach, and that sheer, dominant presence she gave off just by existing in the same space as me. Oh my God, that's really a huge dick. The sight was overwhelming, completely blowing apart whatever picture I'd built up from textbooks or whispered rumors. I'd heard female alphas had these tentacles, sure, but this was my first time actually seeing one. Actually, scratch that. This was my first time seeing a live dick at all. It throbbed a little in the dim light, thick and intimidating. A physical version of the alpha power that kept this entire city terrified of her. What are you staring at, Four Eyes? Her voice yanked me out of my... I did my best to pull myself together, even with something stirring inside me I didn't want to admit. A strange, unfamiliar heat crawled up my neck, my heart hammering faster while I forced my face into something cold and indifferent. Your fuckery noises. Keep it down. You're distracting me from reading. I spat the words out, trying to sound brave, keeping my spine straight as I fought to hold on to whatever control I had left. My voice tried to meet those crimson eyes. My mind, though, was somewhere lower. She stepped closer. I stepped back. You're not a student. Why read? She tilted her head, a smirk curling on her lips as she looked down at me, completely unbothered by her own nakedness. It's not your business, I snapped. Then it's also not your business what I do in my house. She leaned in a fraction, that heavy, dominant scent of her pheromones wrapping around me like a thick blanket, ready to smother my senses. It's not just your house, it's my house too. Remember, our parents are married, I reminded her, and this wasn't the first time, or the second. I keep saying it, and she keeps firing back with the exact same words. The sentence felt worn out on my tongue, a script neither of us believed, but one I clung to like a shield to keep my dignity intact. I don't remember that. Your mother is a gold digger, and you're just a freeloader. She took another step closer. This is my house. I can fuck whoever I want, anywhere, any place. In my bed, in the kitchen, on the sofa, even in your bedroom. If the moaning bothers you, feel free to leave. There's the door. Every word landed like a slow, deliberate slap, delivered with cold precision that made my blood boil. She gestured toward the far end of the hallway, her smirk stretching wider as she watched me struggle to hold myself together under that stare. She was close. So close I could feel her breath on my skin, and not just that. Parts of her were touching my body. "Get your fucking dick away from me!" I shoved her back. My palms slammed into her sweaty, muscled shoulders, and I shoved with every scrap of strength I had, forcing her back, breaking that suffocating contact. Just because this is your mother's house doesn't mean you own it. It isn't yours, it belongs to your mother, which also makes you a freeloader, a lazy one, partying and sleeping around, spending money that isn't yours. Bitch. The insult ripped out of my throat, sharp and loud, bouncing off the narrow walls of the corridor before she could even open her mouth to cut me off. After that, I went straight to my room. I didn't care what she was about to say. For 4 years, every single day, she's reminded me that I don't belong in this house. I slammed the door and twisted the lock until it clicked, solid and final, and that tiny sound felt like a victory. I collapsed back against the wood, chest heaving, trying to scrub the smell of her pheromones out of my nose. I don't blame her. I blame my mom for dragging me here. She should have just left me at my dad's place, even with him never around. I'd have stayed there happily, and no spoiled brat would be rubbing my face in it, telling me where I don't belong. Just a little more saved up, and I'll have my own apartment, and finally leave this house to Angel Morningstar. Finally, I finished the novel. A romance I picked up from the bookstore. Honestly, I'm not a romance guy at all, but I had to read it. I shut the very last page, a heavy sigh slipping out as the thick paper settled. All that sweet, flowery prose left a strange taste in my mouth, but I squeezed my eyes shut and forced myself to memorize every single plot point, because it's what my crush reads. I tucked the paperback under my arm, my heart doing a nervous little flutter against my ribs just thinking about her. This was all for her. Every single boring page of it. She comes to the bookstore every Saturday afternoon to borrow a book. I work there, and I've developed quite a liking for her. Every weekend, like clockwork, the little bell above the entrance chimes, and she glides right through the doorway, dragging a breath of fresh air into the dusty shop. And I freeze up instantly. Yes, for real, hands hovering over whatever stack of magazines I'm supposed to be sorting. Benita Goodman. Yes, that's her name. I memorized it and stored it deep inside my little heart. The syllables feel smooth and perfect on my tongue, a tiny secret I keep to myself through the long, quiet shifts. Just saying her name in my head is enough to make my palms go slightly sweaty. She also happens to be a beta. An ordinary, sweet beta, none of that aggressive, overwhelming alpha energy that suffocates me back home. She's calm, gentle, absolutely safe. I waited by the counter for her to return the book she borrowed 2 weeks ago. It usually takes her a week or two to finish a novel. My eyes kept darting to the clock on the wall, the ticking matching the frantic rhythm of my pulse. I kept smoothing down the front of my shirt, checking for wrinkles. I borrowed the same book so I'd have something to bond with her over. Maybe she'd even ask me out. I'd burned my whole evening yesterday, underlining sentences and drilling the characters' names into my head, studying that book like it was a final exam. If this didn't hand us something real to talk about, nothing ever would. So I waited, and waited, for her to walk in. I kept my hands busy, arranging the shelves, then rearranging them again. I hauled stacks of heavy hardbacks around, sliding them into their alphabetical slots over and over until my fingers were coated in a thin gray film of dust. My manager had already told me I could clock out, but I kept inventing reasons to hover near the front door. And then, there she was, walking into the store. The bell chimed loud and bright, and she pushed through the glass door with this soft little smile on her lips. My stomach did a full somersault, and I nearly dropped the book wipe in my hand. I shoved my black frames back up the bridge of my nose and pulled in one deep, steadying breath to stop my hands from trembling, smoothing the fabric down over my hips. "Let me take care of this patron," I told my coworker, Katie. I leaned in and gave her a sharp, pleading jab with my elbow, my voice barely a whisper. She shot me a look, then stepped aside. Katie knew exactly how hard I'd fallen for Benita. Her eyebrows went up, that knowing, troublemaker grin spreading across her face as she backed off and waved an open palm toward the register. "Welcome back, Benny." I smiled at her. My voice came out a pitch too high, my heart slamming against my ribs as she walked up to the counter. "Hello, I need to return this book and borrow another one." Her soft voice rolled over me, and every knot of tension in my shoulders just dissolved. She handed me the book. The smooth cover grazed my fingers as I took it, and that half-second of contact sent a tiny jolt of electricity shooting straight up my arm. "Whoa, I see you've read Thorn Hearts. I'm a huge fan of the female lead, Rebecca," I said, fishing for a conversation. I held the book up between us, tapping the cover with a shaky index finger, my eyes locked on hers as I delivered the line I'd rehearsed all morning. And it worked. Her eyes lit up on the spot, a bright spark flashing in her gaze as she leaned into the counter, hook, line, sinker. While I pulled recommendations for her, she never stopped talking about the leads. The conversation stretched on so long that neither of us noticed the time slipping away. Her hands flew as she talked, that soft laugh escaping while she argued about the tragic ending, and I nodded along, hanging on every word, completely hypnotized by the way her lips moved. The rest of the bookstore blurred into background static. When I finished checking out her new book, she thanked me, the barcode scanner let out one final beep, and my chest went tight as she gathered her things, disappointment sinking like a stone into my gut. Just when I figured I'd be waiting another 2 whole weeks for a shot at getting her to ask me out, she stopped short of the door, her boots pivoting on the wooden floor as she turned back to face me. "Are you free tomorrow evening?" The question I'd been waiting on forever. It felt like it had taken centuries to finally arrive. Finally. Time flat out stopped. The air froze in my throat as the words hung in the space between us. "Huh? Yes, I'm free tomorrow. It's not like I have a very busy schedule planned. Even if I did, I'd probably cancel it." The words came out in a panicked rush, sentences tripping over each other before my brain had a chance to filter a single one. What is wrong with me? April, hold it together. You're supposed to look cool in front of her, not stupid. I wanted to smack myself. My face went up in flames, this sudden, roaring heat, and I gripped the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Just when I was sure she thought I was a total weirdo, Benny smiled. A soft, real laugh slipped out of her eyes crinkling at the corners in a way that turned my knees into absolute jelly. "You're funny. All right then, I'll pick you up at 7 tomorrow night." She gave me a small wave goodbye, her boots tapping softly across the floor as she stepped out into the afternoon air. I nodded, and she walked away. I just stood there, staring at the empty doorway, the little bell above it still trembling from her exit. Yes. 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 I let out a silent, delirious scream, throwing my arms straight up as a huge, unstoppable grin swallowed my whole face. I finally bagged the girl of my sleepless nights. Every hour I'd wasted on trashy romance novels and staring at my ceiling? Worth it. Every single one. I'm going on a date tomorrow. My heart was hammering so hard I swear it was about to punch straight through my ribs. "What are you going to wear, April?" "Since it's your first date, you have to look dashing," Katie said. Her voice popped my little bubble, and I actually jumped as she slid back over to the register, mischief written all over her face. I couldn't believe it. She'd been listening to the entire conversation. She'd been standing a few feet away behind the romance aisle the whole time, a stack of returned books hugged to her chest. Not that I blamed her. She was beaming, grinning ear to ear, celebrating the win right along with me. She was the one who told me to read the books Benny reads. A perfect way in, she said, because people with the same interests fall for each other fast and never drift apart. And her advice had worked like a charm, turning a hopeless crush into an actual, real, happening date. And yes, she was right. Everything was falling into place exactly the way it was meant to. I just got the girl of my dreams. I grabbed Katie's hands, bouncing a little on my shoes as the excitement bubbled right back up. We're going to be together, and we'll never fall apart. The future felt bright and certain, wiping out every dark, lingering thought about my miserable home life. The next day, I took Katie's advice and ordered a new dress online. Tight, short, red bodycon. It showed a little skin, but nothing scandalous. I tugged the fabric down over my thighs, checking my reflection from every angle in the full-length mirror. That vibrant red was bold, hugging curves I wasn't used to showing off. I needed to look sexy. I smoothed the tight material over my waist and took a shallow breath to keep my stomach flat. I wanted to make an impression, a real one. I did my makeup, brushed on a thin layer of lip gloss, my fingers shaking a little as I lined my eyes. The tall black heels gave me a few extra inches and a little extra nerve. Honestly, this was the first time in my life I'd spent hours getting ready. The bathroom counter looked like a crime scene. Brushes everywhere, hairpins scattered, makeup palettes lying open. And last of all, I curled my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror and decided I was ready. I took a deep breath, nodded at the stranger staring back at me, and felt an actual spark of pride. Then I ruined the whole beautiful look by putting on my glasses. The thick plastic frames slid onto my nose and instantly killed the sleek, sophisticated vibe I'd worked so hard to build. I needed them, because without them, I couldn't see a thing. The second they came off, the whole world melted into one fuzzy, dangerous smudge. I'd just take them off once I got to the library, since Benny was picking me up from there. I'd stumble my way down the sidewalk, blind but pretty, until I reached the meeting spot. The moment I stepped downstairs, I ran straight into the girl of my nightmares. "And where do you think you're going?" Angel Morningstar sat on the couch, legs crossed, hands folded. The leather cushions groaned softly under her weight as she leaned back, watching me with that cold, unblinking stare. The whole living room seemed to shrink the second her gaze locked on me, flooding the space with that thick, heavy alpha presence that always made it hard to pull in a full breath. She looked like a parent who just caught their kid sneaking out of the house. Her mouth was a tight, hard line, her head tilted slightly to one side, like she was waiting for me to crack and confess to some crime. But I wasn't a child. I was a grown woman, and how dare she use that tone with me? Hot anger surged through my veins, my hands clenching tight against the fabric of my new dress. I swallowed hard, forced my shoulders square, refusing to let her see how much her judgment got under my skin. She wasn't even supposed to be home right now. It was Sunday, and she was usually out at some random club, burning through her mother's money. The house was always empty on weekends, giving me a few precious hours to exist without tiptoeing around her. Finding her anchored to that sofa tonight felt like a cruel, deliberate trap built to wreck my evening. I ignored her like she was another piece of furniture and headed for the door. Eyes forward, heels clicking loudly against the floor, I hurried past the sofa, focused entirely on the brass doorknob just a few feet away. And this girl had the audacity to block my way out. Before my fingers could even brush the handle, a rush of warm air moved through the hallway, and a dark shadow dropped over the exit. Her massive, athletic frame cut off my path in an instant, and I skidded to a stop on the polished marble to keep from slamming straight into her chest. I asked a question. "Where do you think you're going at this time of day?" The words sliced through the quiet house, sharp and demanding, leaving zero room for negotiation. That stupid, annoying, husky voice of hers only made me hate her more. The deep, vibrating tone rasped against my nerves, sending a jolt of pure irritation straight down my spine while I stood there, trapped. I could see her clearly now. Harmless yellow shirt, tattoos covering both arms. The bright fabric looked completely ridiculous against the dark, menacing ink stretching from her wrists all the way up to her shoulders, twisting into intricate shapes. I could even spot a new one on her left arm. The dark lines looked slightly raised, still fresh, curling around her forearm like a black vine and dragging my eyes straight to the hard muscle underneath. I tried to slip past her, but that tall frame of hers kept sliding into my way. I dodged left, she stepped smoothly to the side, matching me before I even finished moving. I went for the gap by her right shoulder. She shifted her weight again and shut the space down completely. Damn that masculine alpha gift of hers. Every move she made was fast, precise, effortless, powered by raw physical strength I could never hope to match. We were both women, yet somehow, just because we belonged to different secondary genders, she got handed every advantage while I, a mere omega, had to fight for scraps. The unfairness of it burned in my chest, a constant, heavy weight, reminding me of my own vulnerability every single day I lived under this roof. Height was one of those advantages. God, I hate her stupid height. She towered over me without even trying, making me feel small and insignificant just by standing in my personal space. Finally, I gave up and squared off with her. Looking up into those irritating crimson eyes felt like craning my neck at a giant tree. I planted my hands on my hips, tilted my head back as far as it would go, and stared straight into that deep, bloody red, anything to hide the tremble in my chin. "What is your problem? Do I look like some child who needs your permission before going out?" I boldly asked. My voice came out sharp, ringing down the narrow hallway as I forced myself to hold her stare without blinking behind my glasses. "This is my house, and I need to know who goes in and out of it, so I won't ask again. Where are you going? Or you're going straight back to your room." She never raised her voice, but that flat, dangerous calm made the hairs on my arms stand up instantly. She leaned in a little, her chest practically crowding into my space. "Arg!" I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood, my heart slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird while her arrogance filled the air. This girl annoyed me more with every passing second. Every word out of her mouth felt like a deliberate attempt to suffocate me, to strip away whatever tiny scrap of freedom I had left. Since when did any of this start? The sudden switch in her behavior made no sense at all, knocking me completely off balance as I tried to read that blank expression. Sure, we'd lived under the same roof for 4 years, but not once had she asked where I was going. Normally, she couldn't care less if I vanished for days, too wrapped up in her own life, her own friends, her own endless parties. I had to be there on time. I couldn't keep Benny waiting. The thought of her standing outside the library alone, searching the dark for me, sent a cold wave of panic straight through my stomach. "The library. I'm going to the library. Now get out of my way," I spat. I shoved the words right into her face, my voice shaking with fear and pure defiance as I edged one tiny step forward. And just when I thought she'd finally back off, Angel stepped closer. The distance between us vanished, her huge shadow swallowing me whole as she pressed into my space. What is the meaning of this nonsense? My breath snagged in my throat as a thick wave of cedar and smoke pheromones rolled over my face, dizzying me in an instant. I stumbled backward and stopped only when my spine hit the wall. Wait, why was there a wall behind me? Cornered. Completely. The space around me shrank and shrank until the only direction left to look was up, straight at her. Angel slammed one hand against the wall, sealing off my escape. Her whole body loomed over mine. The heat pouring off her skin was almost unbearable, a warm wall of muscle holding me pinned to the house itself. Four Eyes, you should never lie to me. I can always tell when someone is. She leaned down, her face close enough that I could see the tiny flecks swimming in the dark red of her pupils, her gaze tracking the frantic rise and fall of my chest. "What are you talking about, Angel?" "I work at the library, and that's where I'm heading. I don't even need to explain myself to you." The words scraped out of my tight throat, my hands clutching my little purse like a shield while I tried to twist my face away from hers. "Who goes to a library looking like this, huh? Don't tell me you're secretly seeing someone. Tell me who that loser is." Her eyes raked over the tight red fabric of my dress, lingering on the bare skin of my neck before snapping back up and locking onto mine with sudden, vicious intensity. I blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. The sheer absurdity of the accusation stole my voice for a second, my mind scrambling for any exit from this ridiculous conversation. Was this girl actually serious? She was acting completely insane, stomping into a part of my life she had zero right to touch, and it was driving me up the wall. This had to end. I had to break whatever hold she had on me before I lost my mind entirely or missed my date. I lifted my phone to her face and flashed her mother's contact. "I'm going to call your mom this instant and tell her you're disturbing my peace again," I threatened. I glared up at her, forcing my expression into something hard and unshakable, playing the only card I had in this house. I didn't usually call Mrs. Morningstar, but I would, if this girl refused to back off. I was desperate enough to eat every ounce of drama that would follow, anything to get this terrifying weight off my chest right now. "Don't you think I'm scared of my mother? Go ahead, dial the number, call her." She didn't shift an inch, her face perfectly steady as she stared down at the blinking screen with an expression of pure boredom. Then she smirked. "And I'm going to call your mom and tell her you've been drinking and smoking with some stupid boys." The lie slid out of her mouth so smoothly my jaw dropped, her tone dripping with smug satisfaction. She knew exactly how much power she was holding. What the hell? Why would you make accusations like that? I've never done any of those things, and even if I did, I'm old enough to drink alcohol. My voice climbed, my cheeks burning hot as I stared at her in flat disbelief, my hands trembling with rage. You look like a baby. How old are you, 16? She tilted her head, eyes narrowing as she took in my curled hair and my makeup, a mocking chuckle rumbling deep in her chest. God, no. I'm 21. I ground my teeth, the number tearing out of my throat as I tried to claim some scrap of adulthood in front of her towering frame. My palm slammed into her chest, pressing hard against the solid muscle under her shirt, and she didn't move an inch, anchored to the floor, solid as stone. Her thumb hooked the edge of my chin, her grip firm, unyielding, tipping my head back until looking away wasn't an option anymore. If you want to leave this house, go change your clothes and wipe off all that makeup. The press of her fingers was warm against my skin, sending a strange, terrifying shiver all the way down to my toes while she held me there, caught. Her crimson eyes narrowed, just slightly. Something in that stare flared hotter, burning right through the glass of my lenses as she looked down at my painted lips. You don't deserve to look this pretty.